Parinishthita Niyaguna Akyanam Yadiditavam. Word for word. Parinishthita, fully realized. Api, in spite of. Nayagunye, in transcendence. Uttama, enlightened. Shloka, verse. Lilaya, by the pastimes. Grihita, being attracted. Cheta, attention. Rajashe, O saintly king. Akyanam, delineation. Yat, that. Aditavan, I have studied. O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. You can say responsibly, O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The Absolute Truth is realized as the impersonal Brahman at the first instance by philosophical speculation, and later as the Supersoul by further progress of transcendental knowledge. But if, by the grace of the Lord, an impersonalist is enlightened by the superior statements of Srimad Bhagavatam, he is also converted into a transcendental devotee of the personality of Godhead. With a poor fund of knowledge, we cannot adjust to the idea of the personality of the Absolute Truth, and the personal activities of the Lord are deplored by the less intelligent impersonalists. But reasons and arguments, together with the transcendental process of approaching the Absolute Truth, help even the staunch impersonalist to become attracted by the personal activities of the Lord. A person like Sukadeva Goswami cannot be attracted by any mundane activity. But when such a devotee is convinced by a superior method, he is certainly attracted by the transcendental activities of the Lord. The Lord is transcendental, as are his activities. He is neither inactive nor impersonal. Amma Jnanatimanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshunamritamyena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Nagayate Garim Yatkipatamaham Vande Sri Gurun Dinitaranam Paranam Panamananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Vanchakalpatarudascha Kripasindhuvyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. So this is Sukadeva Goswami speaking to King Parikshit and the sages at Naimisharanya. So I was looking in the first canto, somehow or other, not quite up to speed with your situation, so I got enlightened that we're on the second canto. So some of the points that I was just thinking of yesterday are a little relevant, so skew the subject a little bit. So the idea is that the process, that bhakti can attract the mind even of a great soul, because bhakti manifest the wonderful personal relationship that the devotees enjoy with the Lord. So we heard some excellent refutations of the Mayavad misconceptions over the last couple of days based on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I was very enlivened to hear Vasu's many anecdotes and points yesterday relating to refutation of the impersonal idea. So the catalyst to understand the personal nature of the Lord, Prabhupada mentions here, is reason and argument and the transcendental method, the superior method. Reasons and argument together with the transcendental method of approaching the absolute truth. So that transcendental method is that tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. You have to approach a self-realized soul. In the previous text, this idea culminates in this revelation or realization by Sukadeva Goswami, because King Parikshit had the foresight and he had the inspiration to seek out the bona fide spiritual master when he was cursed. We heard in the end of the last chapter, the last canto, the last chapter, how King Parikshit sought out the association of a great soul in order to put the relevant question: what is the point of human life and what should a man think about, especially one who is about to die? And in this chapter, then Sukadeva Goswami addresses the king that your questions are very good because they relate to everybody's welfare. Every human being should understand what is the goal of life. So after congratulating the king for his good question, then Sukadeva Goswami criticizes the materialistic way of life whereby spiritual pursuit is not emphasized. He said that Griha ladies, those who are interested in household life, have so many subjects to talk about, but they rarely take interest in Atma Tattva, the science of the soul. And they're very interested, they're completely absorbed in looking after their families, sex life, shopping, maintaining family members. And then he goes on to say that the perfection of life can be attained by the single-pointed focus of hearing about the Lord, glorifying the Lord, remembering the Lord and worshipping the Lord. And he says that the perfection of all activities, the perfection of Edvan Sankhya Yoga, the perfection of philosophical search for the knowledge, the perfection of yoga, the perfection of performing one's duties, culminates in remembering the personality of Godhead at the time of death. Ante Narayana Smriti. Everything will be tested at the time of death. And then it comes to this verse where Sukadeva Goswami is revealing his own situation, that he wasn't attracted. He was in a very, very unique position in the material world. Everyone in the material world is under the modes of material nature. But here, Sukadeva Goswami is declaring that he is, what's the word? Nirgunya is a very unique position, because scripture says, Bhagavad Gita says, we're all under the effects of the different modes of material nature. But this rare soul, Sukadeva Goswami, was not attracted to anything in the material nature. He wouldn't even come out of the womb until he was supplicated personally by the Lord and given assurance that you won't be overcome by my powerful material energy. Only then did Sukadeva Goswami agree to appear and perform the function for which he descended from the spiritual world. And that was to vibrate the transcendental glories of the Lord in the form of his discussion with King Parikshit. So because King Parikshit had the culture and the spiritual insight, then he glorified Sukadeva Goswami and put himself in the humble position that we are grihastas. Normally we are not given consideration by personalities who are elevated in transcendence, but you are so kind because of my relationship with Krishna's devotees, the Pandavas. You have come before me at this time of my death. So he glorified Sukadeva Goswami. He glorified the position of the sadhu, and he appreciated the wonderful opportunity to have the association of the sadhu and to hear from him. So this is the Vedic culture, that when a sadhu, the association of a sadhu is available, then we should be very appreciative and enthusiastic to take that association and to benefit from that association. Scripture says even a small amount of association with a genuine sadhu can impel one on the path of perfection. Definitely we have the exemplary pastimes and the example of a sadhu whose unquestionable level of Krishna consciousness is very much apparent, because we have so many personal reflections of Srila Prabhupada and the personal disciples that are still here on the planet. We have biographies, the Prabhupada Leela Amrita, the Transcendental Diary, the Great Transcendental Adventure. We have numerous, what are they called, the Remembering Prabhupada Remembrances. There are so many. The evidence is mounting, voluminous evidence about the unquestionable qualification of Srila Prabhupada being a genuine sadhu, and the nature of a genuine sadhu. What is it? Bhagavatas Tirtha something. Kranti Tirthani. Yudhisthira Maharaj glorifies Narada Muni. Glorifies Vidura, that you are a real sadhu. You carry the Lord in your heart. You are like a holy place of pilgrimage that can sanctify all places that you travel to. And how does the sadhu sanctify a place? He sanctifies the heart of the disciple as one of his abilities to uplift and give transcendental understanding. So Prabhupada explains in the purport of Tadvidi Pranipatena 434 in the Bhagavad Gita that it's not some kind of airy-fairy, mystical touch that the Guru gives. I know when I was young and foolish, still foolish, but when I was more foolish, and we went to so many gurus and different people, and one of them was advertising the Shakti Pat. But you had to pay for the Shakti Pat, the touch of the Guru, and you would have some special cosmic consciousness. Anyway, I couldn't raise the $60, so I never got the Shakti Pat. But we did get the secret mantra, that was only $30, but not much happened. Then we went for the Shakti Pat, and on like this. But Prabhupada is saying it's not some kind of magical touch like an electric current that goes from the Guru to the disciple and surcharges him, and then the Guru is run out of energy. This is a material perception, misconception. But the Guru is one who is heavy with transcendental knowledge. He understands the position of the Lord. He understands our opportunity to awaken our relationship with the Lord, and he wants to evoke that love for Krishna. We sing Prema Bhakti Yaha Hoite Abhidya Vinasa Yate. That the spiritual master, he imbues the disciple with the touch of this love, attraction for Krishna, by removing ignorance, because actually we all have Krishna within our heart, and our relationship, our attraction for Krishna is impeded because there are material anarthas, lust, greed, anger, all these things are impeding our darshan of the Lord within the heart. But by the teaching, by accepting the path of bhakti and seeing the example of sadhus, then even an ordinary person can be elevated to the spiritual platform. Here we are seeing the position of an extraordinary person, Sukadeva Goswami, that is relating his own situation. But Srila Prabhupada has showed how this position is available to everyone. And Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 13th chapter, that among transcendentalists who take to the process of spiritual realization, there are those who just by the process of hearing can be benefited. And Srila Prabhupada and this Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage very much emphasizes this process of hearing from the authority so that we can dispel misgivings about what is actually Krishna consciousness. So the observable thing about Srila Prabhupada, he was always clarifying, continually clarifying what is God, who is Krishna, and how to see him. And Prabhupada never tired of this service of making Krishna, trying to make Krishna available to everyone. So Srila Prabhupada gave us Bhagavad Gita as it is, a straightforward, manual of spiritual knowledge, the process of attaining the Lord through, as it says here, through knowledge and through the appropriate process. So in Bhagavad Gita there are different processes extolled there. There's the process of yoga. Arjuna says, I can't do it, it's too hard. The mind is difficult. There's the process of jnana, philosophical understanding. There's the process of karma, offering fruits to offering some fruit of our activity to the Lord. But Srila Prabhupada, in his introduction, he very clearly puts us straight that the conclusion of every chapter of Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti, yes, surrender to Krishna. The conclusion of every chapter is Bhakti, but people are, screwing something else out as the meaning of Bhagavad Gita. Yesterday we were hearing about, or the day before, about, Prabhupada's coming to America and staying in the ashram of Dr. Mishra, and all these impersonalists were, giving some incomplete understanding of the absolute, and making a living out of airing their mystical prowess. And people, Prabhupada noted, they're easily cheated. They want to cheat her. But Prabhupada was compassionate, and he spoke spiritual knowledge, but that was a bit of a challenge to Dr. Mishra, so he said, we'll have the Swami's kirtan, but not his lecture. So Prabhupada was eventually put out onto the street and had to take refuge in a little room somewhere on the Bowery where, things were not really congenial for preaching. His efforts were not meeting fruit at that time. His typewriter was stolen, and his room was broken into. The only possession he had, back in his Bhagavatams and his typewriter, was stolen. And Prabhupada found himself in a very vulnerable position. And if you hear this lecture, there's reminiscence of Prabhupada in those days saying, I was very depressed at that time. Of course, Prabhupada's depression, we can't, compare it with our own emotional states, because Prabhupada said, I was never a man to be disappointed. So that, great devotees, they see when there are impediments, then, it's more reason to depend more on Krishna. And luckily Prabhupada had that conviction, and by his dependence on Krishna, then the miracle, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness gradually manifested. So Srila Prabhupada, his way was to speak the truth about Krishna, and to expose the less than truth, or the compromised teachings that were coming in the name of Indian spirituality by people who should have known better. And Srila Prabhupada uncompromisingly exposed anything which was less than the real benefit of the living entity. The real benefit of the living entity is only attained when he takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. This is explained by Prahlad Maharaj in the Bhagavatam, where he says that I'm satisfied myself in any condition of material life because I can take shelter of the bliss of chanting your holy name. Soche tato mukha vichekasa. That, but I am lamenting because fools are bewildered by the illusory energy and are making elaborate plans to find happiness in the material world where there is no happiness. Srila Prabhupada exhibited that mood of Prahlad Maharaj, that he was so concerned. He had so much lamentation for us that he forced Lord Krishna to fulfill his ambition to fulfill the prophecy, the desire of the spiritual master, and the prophecy of the acharyas in the scriptures to bring Krishna consciousness to the world. So we see throughout Srila Prabhupada's life, establishing our society, that Prabhupada was tirelessly hammering this message. Prabhupada likened himself to his spiritual master, preaching Krishna consciousness with the Bhagavatam in one hand and the hammer, the sledgehammer in the other hand. So Prabhupada was not one to compromise. We heard yesterday a little bit about Dr. Patel. Srila Prabhupada would daily have some sparring in Juhu Beach when he would walk along the beach with his disciples, having his morning walk, and often accompanied by one Dr. Patel, who had a very unique relationship with Srila Prabhupada, it seems. But it was somewhat disconcerting sometimes to the devotees, because Dr. Patel seemed to display the qualities of a, dyed-in-the-wool impersonalist. Prabhupada would seem to convince him certain arguments, but then next day Dr. Patel would rethink it and come back and present some more, less than pure bhakti. So I was just discussing with my friend Ayodhya Dave. I have to do readings sometimes in the evenings, reading some Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I was trying to get a couple of anecdotes together for today's class, and Ayodhya is a fairly avid reader, so he helped me out. But he reminded me of one, I'm not sure if I'd heard it, but he was explaining. There was one particular scenario with Dr. Patel where Srila Prabhupada was exposing the rascals. These people, as Prabhupada would say, they're just cheating, these impersonalists, and this one and that one. Sometimes the devotees would name them, and Prabhupada would cut them down. What is their philosophy? Why are they cheating the public? And so Dr. Patel would become defensive. You, Swami, you have your philosophy and you can promote it. but why do you have to criticize the others? Just leave them alone. And this was going on and becoming quite antagonistic. And many times Dr. Patel would defend this yogi and this guru, and Prabhupada would not compromise it. That it's not my words, it's Krishna that's criticizing them. In this particular instance, then when Dr. Patel he challenged Prabhupada, why don't you just you just stick to your philosophy but not criticize these others? And Prabhupada, he gave an example. He said just like in the operating theatre, if someone is on the operating table and some fool rushes in and starts operating that doesn't know what he's doing, he said the doctor cannot stand idle. Get this fool out of here. This is the example Prabhupada gave, that people are tampering in the spiritual lives of people, and Prabhupada cannot stand idly because he's got compassion to bring everyone to Krishna consciousness. I thought that was a nice example. Prabhupada was expert at giving examples relevant to the particular time and circumstance of Dr. Patel, so he gave him a doctor's example. If you're a doctor and some quack comes along, then you won't be able to, tolerate that. Another example that I was just reading in Shyama Sundar's wonderful book, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, Volume 2. It's a must read. So, Srila Prabhupada, towards the end of the book, and maybe Ramai Swami was firstly there, I'm not sure, but he arrived in Australia after being ejected from Singapore. Prabhupada came from India. He just established the foundations of the three main temples. The foundation lay in stone of the Mayapur. Then he went to Vrindavan, then he went to Mumbai. All the space of around 2 weeks, he established 3 major projects. And within a few weeks, he left them to the disciples, and he went on his world trip, starting in Singapore and then Australia. But when he arrived in Singapore, the devotees had arranged programs, but the stalwart materialists wouldn't let him into Singapore. So Prabhupada had to stay and somehow they were afraid of the Vaishnava. So Prabhupada stayed several hours in the airport, and then finally they went onward to Australia and landed in Sydney, where Srila Prabhupada was ready to address several reporters and different programs, temple programs. Prabhupada went on, despite the fact of having no sleep for practically a couple of days, and Shyama Sundar was noting how Prabhupada was unfazed. He was on the transcendental platform, he was just preaching, and then he went on to New Zealand a short time later, and when he arrived in Auckland, they had a lot of nice programs arranged in the university and different places, and Prabhupada was very enlivened speaking to the particular interested people that had been arranged to come to these programs. So after a couple of days, there was a program in the Gandhi Hall, which we did Tamal Krishna Maharaj's play, the Jagannath Natakam, one time when I was living in Auckland. It wasn't very good, but Maharaj was very encouraging anyway. But anyway, this time they arranged a program there for the Artist Society. The New Zealand Artist Society was invited to come along. I think it was in the Gandhi Hall, he mentioned there. And so Prabhupada gave a lecture which fascinated Shyama Sundar because of showing his dexterity in every situation. Prabhupada lectured on Krishna, the Supreme Artist. And I've heard that lecture, it's a very wonderful lecture. Prabhupada is describing that how much effort it takes to paint a rose. You have to get the palette, mix all the colours, and into this philosophy. Absolute, God is a living being with feelings, with senses, with activities. Jnana Bala Kriyacha. In the verse I was going to lecture on, Prabhupada was mentioning this verse, that the Lord has inconceivable potencies and they manifest. I think Prabhupada was quoting this verse to the artists, that without any effort. It's so difficult to paint very nicely, isn't it? Is anyone an artist here? I've painted a gum tree on the dunny door at New Govardhana. You can see it there. It's not very good, but it was a lot of effort. No artists here? Come on, there's so much beautiful art around Govardhana. Plenty of them. But anyway, Prabhupada was making this point. Krishna's art is just manifesting without any effort, swabhavaki, just like effortless. And it is very amazing. No one can compete with Krishna's abilities. So Krishna said, Kamara Krishna Dita Pada. Krishna belongs to the devotee, and there is no other process to understand Krishna, to connect with Krishna, than going through his devotee. Yasyat prasada bhagavat prasada. When we get the blessing of the devotee of the Lord, then we can get Krishna's blessing. And without getting the blessing of the devotee of the Lord, it will be impossible to progress in spiritual advancement. So this is the whole key in spiritual life, is to please the spiritual master. I remember I was here a year ago and Alalanatha was giving a very nice dissertation on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which he does every Saturday. I was fortunate, and he taught us a little saying that Prabhupada had mentioned in a verse there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhupada says that the order of the spiritual master is the principle, active principle of devotional service. And he made us learn it, so you can learn it too. The order of the spiritual master is the active principle of devotional service. Who knows it? Is?
The active principle.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita says, what is it? Truth spoken, eloquence is truth spoken concisely. So Prabhupada is concisely given this process of bhakti. The order of the spiritual master is the active principle of devotional service. Prabhupada followed the order of his spiritual master with his heart and soul. At the fag end of life, he risked his security. He risked everything to fulfill the order of the spiritual master. And Prabhupada said, this is the secret of success, to take the order of your spiritual master very seriously. It's the active principle of devotional service, the order of the spiritual master. So that is our connection with Krishna, to hear the words of the spiritual master and to put them into practice in our life. Hare Krishna. So, let's see if I had any other note here. There was a nice anecdote that Guru Das Prabhu mentioned when he was travelling through. He stayed down at our place there for a few days, and I heard him mention it a couple of times. I'm not sure if I got it exactly right, but he said that there was one businessman, and somehow I think he had a television set or something, and somehow there was a broadcast of the devotees in America, in Los Angeles or New York or somewhere, chanting. And then Srila Prabhupada and his entourage arrived in Mumbai, and Guru Das was there, and they were doing some, Harinam chanting in different programs. And they went to this man's shop, and the man, he was very amazed. He'd just been seeing Hare Krishnas on TV on the other side of the world. And he said something like, you Hare Krishnas are all over, Krishna is all over the world. And Prabhupada immediately responded, not just this world. So Guru Das, he recollected that a couple of times, because the impact on Guru Das was that Prabhupada was seeing Krishna in a very special way, that seeing a big vision. A Brahmana, he's broad-minded, and Prabhupada's desire was to make Brahmanas to expand the consciousness of everybody. I'll just finish with one last personal reminiscence. When I was a wandering hippie, the yogis and people had put out this magazine in my youth. It was called Cosmos, and it was all the latest, high-polluting yoga and meditation and gurus and all sorts of things. And we couldn't wait for the edition. I don't know how much it was, like $5 or something, and read through these cosmic realizations of different yogis and bogies and people, But I noticed in that magazine, and I didn't recollect it till later, but they were very, disparaging of Hare Krishnas. They had one article in there, they had one column that was called Hari Gumboot. And I didn't read it very much, I didn't really know the Hare Krishnas very much. But they were thinking themselves, very, very cosmic consciousness. This magazine was all about cosmic consciousness. But somehow or other, they didn't appreciate the position very much of Hare Krishnas, because the Hare Krishnas, they always just want to chant Hare Krishna. They don't want to talk about, so much sophisticated philosophy. At least that's their superficial impression. But actually, when you come to Krishna consciousness, as I did, and then you hear devotees explain the wonderful science of Krishna consciousness and of elevating ourselves to the higher platform, then you realise how profound, and you begin to realise how profound and deep it is. Because that hearing from the devotees is the first part of devotional service. When we perform devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting, then the transcendental message can begin to manifest in our heart. But whilst our heart is coloured by anarthas, especially false prestige and pride, this is a big anartha. And the spiritual master, through the process of directing us in humble service to the Lord, he can remove this false pride so that we can begin to appreciate Krishna everywhere. So there's one nice, Ayodhya told me one nice story. He was watching in Prabhupada Remembrances. One devotee was telling how one time Prabhupada, he was in a place and a devotee said, "Prabhupada, I must have performed great austerities and penances to be your disciple." And Prabhupada said, "You did nothing. It's all by my mercy." So it's a nice realization too, that we should always remember that, as one time I said in the class, the only difference between you and someone else on the other side of the fence is that a devotee spends some time to help you understand Krishna consciousness. There's something of relevance there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on Bhagavatam. It's reminding me of Govardhana Leela here, being in New Govardhana. Isn't it? I was really worried yesterday I was going to get flooded in here, and I was running around getting all worked up that Ajita was there, cool as a cucumber, and Vasu. I've been through this all before so many times. So this is exciting for a person from the dry lands. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Has anyone got any comment? Maharaj? Yes.
In the beginning of the class, you mentioned how even great souls can be attracted to Krishna or to devotional service, referring to
Lord Chaitanya explained the Atmarama verse, where it says that even those who are self-realized or established on the path even those who are free from all material desires, especially those who are established on the path of realization, transcendental realization, can also be attracted to the personality of Godhead due to his having transcendental qualities. So the Lord has wonderful transcendental qualities, and by hearing about his qualities and his activities, then we can be attracted.
So some people say that it looks like philosophically incorrect to impersonally down all the time, because even all through the Bhagavatam, there is a verse, and now I don't remember exactly which one, but it says that there are two types of Paramahamsas or great souls. Ones are impersonalists and the other ones are personalists.
Yeah, it mentions here Mahantas,
So it seems a little bit contradictory, and some people say that it's not correct philosophically to put down impersonalists all the time, because actually they're great souls as well. So I see...
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, if we think that impersonalists, according to the Bhagavatam and the scriptures, impersonalist philosophers, impersonalists are both great souls, so why very often we put down impersonalists in our philosophy?
Well, my understanding is that there are maybe some unique cases, like the four Kumaras, like Sukadeva Goswami, who are not Mayavadis, they're not adversaries of devotional service, but they have not had the benefit of association with the pure devotee. So they may be on a platform of being freed from material attraction, but they have not come to the platform of positive engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. So the Prabhupada mentions in one purport in the seventh canto that there is a proliferation of impersonalists, and Prabhupada said that is a problem, and so many of them that it becomes perplexing. Prabhupada says so many people coming out with some speculative philosophy. The four Kumaras who were impersonally realized, but they weren't propagating, that you don't need to surrender to the Lord. This is the problem that Vasu was talking about yesterday in the class. And when people espouse and preach a philosophy that you don't need to surrender to Krishna, then this becomes an impediment for people when they don't realize that we have to surrender to the Lord and that we have to surrender to the spiritual master and inquire from him, but that we are all, God, or we're all little gods. These kinds of deviant philosophies, they mislead the general public. So then the devotee has to rectify the situation. So impersonalism is there, it's part of the absolute, but it can't be expounded to the exclusion of our relationship with the Lord, because that's the important part. When we render service to the Lord, then we realize the nature of the Lord by rendering service. By surrendering and rendering service, by becoming a servant of the servant, then we automatically attract the blessings of the Lord and his servants. So people who oppose the devotional service of the Lord, they become a big problem.
So you say that in the Vedas, when they speak about impersonal realization, they're talking all the time, they're including bhakti in that type of philosophy, or is it a speculation?
Apparently the Upanishads, they mainly illustrate or describe the Lord's nirguna attributes, which Krishna mentions in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that one who is, properly situated, is working the welfare for everyone, and he's he's equibalanced, he's equipoised, controls the senses, he can also ultimately attain Krishna consciousness. But it's a long process. Whereas the devotional service of the Lord, Krishna says, I'm the swift deliverer from the ocean of material existence, for one who works for me, who makes me the goal of life, who always thinks of me, and Krishna becomes the swift deliverer from material existence for that person. So the impersonal path can be unnecessary deviation, whereas if you just come to the association of devotees who are enjoying the practices, the impersonalists, they're trying to restrain themselves from any kind of enjoyment, but the devotees are quite happy to perform devotional service by enjoying Rasgulas and Gulab and dancing and singing. We're enjoying the practices, hearing and chanting, discussing about the Lord. It's an enjoyable process. Svade, svade, pade, pade. Every step of devotional service is relishable. Whereas this dry path of renunciation and knowledge, it says that it may help one in the beginning because at least you're endeavouring for some kind of spiritual situation. But once you enter the association of devotees and begin the practice of serving the Lord, then these things are not necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.